This conference
Hey,
will now be recorded.
good morning, everybody. This is the start of the ACLB meeting. Today is July the 22nd, approximate time of 9:08 a.m. We call the meeting to order and verify quorum, please.
All right. Jeff?
Here.
Lori? Here. Julie? Here. Annie?
Annie's muted.
This means here.
Here.
Ed?
Oh, Ed Rollins, you're muted too. Board members, if
Here.
you can go ahead and just every attending board member, you can feel free to unmute right now.
Kathy? Here. And do we have Owen?
Do we have an Owen?
I don't see him on the screen here.
And then staff in attendance today, we have Raul, Chad Cook, administrator, Paul Lindsay, myself, Stephanie Perkins, and compliance investigators, Danny Fry and Dan Murphy.
The quorum's been verified. All right.
Hey, Ruth.
Did somebody say something? Okay, so as we begin the meeting at this point, want to try and get an idea. We have a lot of the public here. I think there's some here in our physical capacity and then a lot of people online. Can we get an idea of the public, if there's any folks there that are looking to speak about the PREA today or any of those rules by either a show of hands or any, however they can tell us? Or take yourself off mute if you plan on speaking today.
This is Eric Bays. I'd like to speak just briefly.
Good morning. This is Scott DiBiasio with the Appraisal Institute. And I'll just point out for the board's edification that the public comment period on the proposed rules, I believe, has concluded.
Mr. DiBiasio, we're aware of that, but we're trying to determine if the number of the members and the public who are here had an expectation that they might be able to speak about the rules based on the number of the public present. So at this time, the board hasn't decided whether or not to reopen the comment period.
Is there anybody else that's online?
And I don't know if this is an appropriate time. I don't know. I believe the gentleman that said that he might want to mention something has already provided testimony. Is that accurate?
That's, yeah.
Okay,
written
so
testimony.
if that's true and there isn't anybody else that has any other comments, then I don't think it's necessary to reopen the comment period. Is that?
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
We need a motion, Chad?
Comment period is closed, so it'll just be a motion to reopen at this point.
Okay.
So right now, you're just in the general public input session.
Sure.
Whatever other issue.
Okay, well, at this time, we are in the general public input section, just to let the public know that this is more of a one-way conversation. We're here to listen to any comments, but the board is not going to be back and forth discussing any of the comments that are made today. At this point, is there anybody that would like to speak, or do we want to go with?
Accepting PREA, unless you guys want to open up that comment period again.
So the comment period for PREA is closed, therefore no public comment can be made on.
Unless you all decide to reopen.
Which I think we just made the decision on to do. Yeah.
So to reiterate to the public, the comment section on the PREA is no longer, it's closed, but if there's any of the public that wants to speak about anything else, please feel free to go ahead and do so. Please limit your comments to about 5 minutes to allow everybody to speak. Do we have? If we don't have any, I'm going to close the public comment section. Okay, hearing no Hearing no comments, I guess we'll close this section of the public comment session and move on to the next item of business, which is the
Adoption of last minute. Oh, sure, if you want to do that.
So I would like to bring up, we have a couple new board members that are here. One is attending. Would like to ask if she, Kathy, would like to introduce herself or say anything to the general public.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Kathy Putenat. My last name is not as hard as it sounds. I'm happy to tell anybody how to say it, just don't butcher it for me. But been here in Oregon since 2018, appraising since 2001. Started out in Colorado, been in Hawaii, been here in Oregon and Washington. Served on the National Association of Appraisers Board, currently serving as committee chairs and members there as well. That's me, resident appraiser.
Well, welcome to the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there, I guess that's the only new member that we have, or do we have?
Do we have Owen Bartels with us today? Did Owen join late? Okay, that's a no.
All right, well, let's go down our action items here. We have adoption of April 22nd, 2024 board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to adopt?
One quick point of order, Jeff. Thank you. I'm sorry.
So sorry.
So there was a typo in the minutes where it reflects chair and vice chair information. The record should show chair and vice chair nominations as opposed to chairman, vice chairman nominations. That was a typo in recording minutes. So chair and vice chair should be what we do.
And since we're kind of writing a little bit general here, this is my first meeting as chair, so the public, please bear with me as we try to get through some of these processes as we go along. Had to help advise cars so that we do this correctly. With that being said, can we get a motion?
I move to adopt the minutes with the corrections that Chad mentioned.
I'll second it.
Okay, Jeff,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes.
Okay, sounds like
Did you
Cheers.
introduce Ed Rollins?
I didn't know who's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, Ed is brand new board member, banker member.
Well, also, just pausing for a second, Ed Rollins, I guess you're a new member here with the board. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us anything about yourself or not?
Sure. Ed Rollins, first board appearance. Been a banker here for just over 20 years, Bank of Eastern Oregon in Heppner. Look forward to partaking as time goes on.
We appreciate your service, Ed. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ed.
Thank you for being here on the board. Okay, moving on to the rulemaking amendments. This is for OAR Chapter 161, Divisions 002, 010, 015, 020, 025, and 050. I would. Do I suggest that?
You can move or you can ask me for clarification.
At this point, what do I do from here? Do I suggest the motion?
You can ask for a motion or make the motion to adopt the rules. Just, do you want to give me a couple of seconds to say something? So
Sure.
This item of rulemaking is to amend existing Oregon administrative rule. This is not related in particular to PAREA. This is to align the existing administrative rules with changes to the criteria issued by the AQB and to correct some previous inconsistencies, rules that referenced other rules that had been changed and things. So this is essentially housekeeping rulemaking, with the exception of new criteria within the AQB criteria. So this is not necessarily for PAREA. This is for the other overarching existing rules, just to be clear.
Understood. Is that, we're good with that? Is there a motion to approve this?
Or discussion.
Or discussion?
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Jeff,
Yes?
Lori,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
and Kathy.
Yes.
Motion approves?
Yep, motion carries.
Moving on to the next one. The next item of business is the rulemaking for PREA rules, OAR Chapter 161, Division 20. Do we, as we talk about this motion, do we open it up for discussion?
That would be where you're at with the board members.
For the board, is there any discussion on this particular item? Want to open up the floor for any board members that want
Just
Um,
amend the administrative rules, right? Not discussion on Korea right now,
So that motion just passed, the amending,
but
The
amending
administrative
the rules for the Korea section of it, correct?
so
Would
Add
just,
those two.
add, yeah.
Okay, all right.
this is the actual implementation of the PREA, is what we're
Except
discussing.
Korean and Oregon.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Jeff, just one suggestion.
Yes.
You can go ahead and have the discussion. I'd suggest that you ask Chad to see if there were any public comments received regarding the proposed rules.
Okay, yeah, since we had our last board meeting, we have online public comments, and I think there's a public meeting. Chad, would you like to go ahead and tell us more about that?
Absolutely, sure. So about a month ago, I forget the exact date of the hearing, and I don't have the full board packet in front of me. You all have those minutes from that hearing. We held a public hearing to receive comments on what you all proposed and approved on April 23rd, I believe is when the notice of rulemaking went out, following the April 22nd board meeting. At that time, that public hearing was scheduled, and it was held in early June to receive comments on PREA. And we did have, I think there was 3 or 4 pieces of written comments, some for, some against, and I would assume that you folks have had time to review those and the audio record of what was shared as well. So yes, there were public comments received, and I believe those were, every board member received those for review prior to today.
Excellent. So as a board, the floor is still open to discuss this particular rulemaking for the PREA rules. Did I hear?
I think
is it
Annie has
Annie?
something.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna hope that we were gonna do just what Chad did and sort of mention that there was public comments. I will say that there was one public comment in particular that I think was an email. I think it was a written comment that kind of reinforced it said basically, it took the words right out of my mouth of what I said in the meeting, which was we're in a unique opportunity to see how this program works in other states before we adopt it ourselves, and actually do better to uphold public trust by studying the data. That's the job we're in, right? Is looking at data to see if this program is actually going to do what we want it to do. So I just wanted to be on record with that observation.
And I'm actually going to second her record. I think as appraisers, our job is to research and analyze data, and we don't have any data. And I just kind of feel like the same email I think Annie's referencing, I would reference. Like, we do not have any data, and we're just going to shove through a program that we have no idea if this is even a successful program. And I just think maybe this is not the right time. I saw a couple of emails saying, like, I realize the real estate market ebbs and flows, and we're in kind of one of those downturns. And we still have time if we so choose to adopt this in the future. We have time to research and analyze this stuff. And I'm just like, I'm very hesitant to start making these rules. And as much as people want to tell me, well, we can make the rule and then we can take it back if we want to, like, things just don't work backwards in the government. As a government employee, I say that. And I am just concerned that adopting this right now, we are setting ourselves up for a lot of, I don't know, backlash from the appraisers that we're supposed to be protecting and we're supposed to be advocating for right now. So, like,
I'm going to go ahead and make some comments if I can as well. I am actually in favor of Perea myself. I currently have a trainee who spent over a year trying to find a supervisor. And my comment with regards to public trust is, what does it do to public trust when we have no real status with regards to how somebody's being trained? We have appraisers that are being trained. I had a conversation with an appraiser just last month. I teach a class, and after the class, he reached out to me and he said, after taking your class, I realized I became certified without really knowing what I was doing. And there's a lot of appraisers that are out there that have no idea whether or not they're being trained by a good supervisor until they're actually sitting in front of their board. They have no idea that they didn't do something right necessarily because they weren't trained properly. We have no requirements with regards to, other than 3 years as a certified appraiser, to be a supervisor. And so the quality of appraisers that we have, and that to me speaks to public trust issues right there. The Perea program offers an opportunity for consistency in training. Yes, it's initial training, it's the initial observation training piece of it. And most of the people I think that are going to be coming out of Perea are going to choose to continue working with another appraiser after they get out of the Perea program. They don't necessarily recognize that they can just jump out of Perea and jump into the business as an appraiser, period.
You don't think that they understand that?
No, I think that they understand that they're not going to be able to just jump out and become an appraiser that's going to get all of this work and doing it as if they know it, and they're going to work, they're going to end up working with another appraiser.
So am I misunderstanding Perea then? Because from what I understand, once you successfully get through Perea, you can go get your license, and then you can open your own, you can hang your.
You can, but what I'm saying is that most appraisers are going to understand through going through the program that they're not going to be, it's going to be still difficult for them to get work and really understand that they're fully to the point of having geographic competency. I know that was something that was brought up at the last meeting, the geographic competency piece of it. You know, they're still going to have to work with somebody for geographic competency. That works across the board for any appraiser. If you move to a new state, when I moved here to Oregon, I had to work with other appraisers that were here, even though I had been certified for many years. I still had to work with somebody here to gain geographic competency. It's going to be the same with regards to the people that come out of the Perea program, but it gives another pathway, and it opens up the change for those barriers to entry that we currently have in the appraisal profession. My trainee is not an exception to the rule. I hear stories all the time of appraisers that have spent 1+ year trying to find somebody that's willing to train them. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago, and they talked about the fact that appraiser trainees that really want to get into the industry are saving up money for a year's salary so that they can offer their services for free, just so they can get somebody to supervise it. And that shouldn't be the case. We should have another option for them to get into the industry, just to break down some of those barriers to entry that we currently have.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm gonna disagree with barriers to entry that you're talking about, because I think the biggest barrier to entry into the appraisal industry is a bachelor's degree. That is the biggest barrier into entry.
That's not an entry requirement.
I get to have my opinion.
Oh, agree.
Oh,
But
no,
that's
I
not-
just wanted.
Having a bachelor's degree is a problem.
That's
like,
not
I don't
a
think-
requirement.
To become a certified general, you have to have a
Certified
bachelor's degree.
general, yes, and
Okay.
that's actually in conversation right now.
I
So
realize
the
that.
ATV is in
But
conversation.
if you want to talk about barriers to entry, that is the biggest barrier to entry that I see, and I am a certified general, so it does affect me. Okay.
And I don't
And-
disagree with you on that at
and-
all.
That is one of the biggest barriers to entry. As far as I feel, you have a lot more confidence that appraisers are going to come out of Perea and they're just going to go right into finding another appraiser. Like you've already stated,
Work with.
that you can't find a mentor. Like, so they're gonna just like come on and they're gonna be just like, oh, I'm not gonna hang my own, I'm not gonna hang my own sign and become an appraiser. I'm gonna go find somebody who wants to take on another appraiser that's licensed. Yeah, I just don't think that's gonna happen. I think that what's gonna happen is we're gonna have a lot of new appraisers who have no experience whatsoever doing it because there's literally no boots on the ground experience with Perea. We're doing these AI generated things. You have to do 3 to qualify. I disagree with that. I think that appraisers are gonna come on, they're gonna get their license and they're gonna go out and they're gonna start appraising. And this is gonna be beneficial to a couple of people. I'm not a residential appraiser. This literally doesn't even affect my life whatsoever. And it's mind-blowing to me that residential appraisers, and I gotta have my own opinion, it is mind-blowing to me that residential appraisers are all for this. Like, not just you. I know, I've talked to other people. I read the comments, I saw it. It's mind-blowing to me that residential people are all in favor of this. I've also talked to some who are just like, this is crazy, what are we doing? Like, we're basically, like, now you don't have to have the experience that you need, that's required. Like, what are we doing and why are we making such a drastic change? I don't understand it.
Well, I want to say something too about this idea of supervisors, and I get this. You know, I've had people get in touch with me that wanted me to supervise them, and I can't. Yeah, and I understand that it's difficult, and that is the ideal way to do it. The thing about it is that I'm not convinced yet that Perea is the way to go because, you know, the fact is that based on what I'm reading about the Perea program, there's only like, is it 5 supervisors for the whole country or something, which is not enough supervise. And I'm sorry, the new gal, I didn't catch your name. Hi. What you're saying about supervisors is very true and very crucial. But I'm not convinced that Perea is offering the level of supervisory work and attention that would be required. All I'm saying is I haven't seen this work yet. And I again, it doesn't affect me either. I'm a certified general. I'm an MAI. But I really think that we need to see this in practice first because of this very issue of if somebody is just going to say, okay, I'm done with Perea, now I'm going to go hang out my shingle and I'm going to start doing appraisals. The fact that you guys are you and Julie are having that conversation right now shows that there's uncertainty about it. We don't know for sure.
Andy, can I jump in just for one quick second? I'm sorry. Jeff, I think Owen Bartels has joined the meeting here with us, and I just wanted to get it on the record that he joined. I believe the time is 9:30. So if we could just do a quick verbal roll call for, not just for Owen, so that he's on the record attending at 9:30.
Okay. Form for Owen.
Bartels.
We can't hear you, Owen. You're off mute, but there's no volume.
Not yet.
Maybe give us an okay that you're here. We can go to that.
Yeah, thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Oh,
go ahead. Are we done?
Go ahead.
Any better?
Oh, yep, we got you now, Owen. Thank you.
It's the circus.
Owen comes in at an exciting time. So that's really what I wanted to say is that the fact that we're having this discussion on both sides shows that there is a certain amount of uncertainty about this that makes me uncomfortable. And I want to put on the record too that I'm not against Perea full toggle switch on off. I want to consider this at a future time when we have more data because of these issues about the uncertainty about what comes out the other end of this program, and we don't actually know.
I'm the same way. I'm gonna add that in case that's not, I'm not 100% opposed to this. I just would like to see this tried in the market first before we start adopting it. I am not opposed to it. If, again, it doesn't affect my life, if this turns out to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, I'm all for it and I would be happy to recommend it. But as of right now, with no data to analyze, I kind of wonder whether, like, this is our whole job, folks. We're appraisers. We're supposed to analyze data. We got no data. What do you do?
Yeah.
Do you have the statistic on this? I believe that Perea has been adopted by 34 states. Is that number correct?
It
Including
was something like 34, 38.
including
If Jeff,
economies like California's and Texas and Florida's. Why is it that that those states believe that this is a program that's beneficial and can work for them, but the state of Oregon cannot adopt, can't be forward thinking on any program until we have some data, that has to be generated by somebody's approval?
Because it's about public trust, Owen. I mean, I don't really care what California does. I used to live in California, but I don't care that what they do in their states does not bear on what we do to uphold public trust in our own state. That's why.
I'm sure that this has been said, but this is all generated by a difficulty that we've had as an industry to bring people forward through the program as it exists, and has existed for the last 30 years. So something has to be done. And this is certainly the idea that's been vetted on a national level and has had programming built behind it. What I hear is trepidation against a change in general. But I think that something like this certainly can work. You say you need data to prove that it can. I suppose I'd like to see something that proves that it doesn't. I mean, are we talking about, asking why the dog isn't barking here?
I think that if we're talking about public trust, I think that just you don't want to have the reasoning of, well, everybody else is doing it, so that must make it okay, when we have no results. We don't have any results out of this yet. So this is why, and this is what was stated in this public comment, we're in a unique position to see if this is going to work by looking at the results in other states. And that is a great position to be in. That is going to give us all the data we need to make a good, solid decision.
And can I just?
Go ahead, sure, yes.
I kind of like to pose a question. What would satisfy you as evidence that it's working? Because the only evidence that I can see is if complaints start getting filed and then they go through the board process. I mean, so it's going to be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years before we would have any evidence one way or the other. And it's actually going to be an absence of evidence that would indicate that it is working. So I just want to pose that question. The other thing that I wanted to say, I am a residential appraiser. I spent my entire, heaven forbid I say this, 37-year career as a residential appraiser, primarily working for mortgage lenders. And I'm here to tell you, a mortgage lender is not going to accept an appraisal from an appraiser that doesn't have at least 3 years of experience without a supervisory signature. So I'm not terribly concerned about a rookie coming out of a Perea program and going out and destroying the public trust or writing a whole bunch of bad appraisals, because they will not be accepted by the market. They simply won't be. So that's all I have to say on the topic.
Is that what you're seeing from other appraisal management companies?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. 3 years minimum. Yeah.
Well, if that was the only work that appraisers did, like, I can understand that, but that's not the only work they do.
That is true, but that is the vast majority of residential appraisers.
Do you know all residential appraisers or the vast majority of residential appraisers?
The vast majority of residential appraisals are performed for residential lending purposes. Yes, there are absolutely forces. There are all sorts of other things that can be done, but we're talking Perea for licensed and certified residential appraisers. Certified general is not, as I understand it, has not been completed yet. So that's what we're talking about. primarily what we're talking about is the mortgage lending community, and I'm here to tell you we police ourselves pretty darn well.
When I would also say that the non-lending stuff gets policed as well on their end. As an example, I was contacted to complete a date of death appraisal. And because it included several different parcels, the attorney on their side opted to go with a certified general appraiser, which I'm not. So they're policing on their side as well, because they're asking questions. So the non-lending side of it is getting policed, and they're not going to also just say, oh, you just came out of the PREA program, okay, we're going to just let you do this work. So I think that piece of it, to speak to what Lori was just saying, is the same thing. We're not going to have appraisers coming out of the PREA program that are just going to jump in and get all this work and be able to go out and do all of this work. Yeah, they may try to go out and get some of this work, but it's going to be put in a place where there's going to be other stopgaps that we put in place to make sure that they're getting the proper appraisals being done.
Maybe.
I guess I would add for my public comment, or for the board comment here. I'm a residential appraiser. I've been a supervisor for almost 10 years. I think I've trained almost 10 successful trainees from the beginning with zero experience all the way up through. Half of them are certified, half are licensed, depending on their education level. If they've got a bachelor's degree or an associate's equivalent, stuff like that has been some challenges for some of those. With that, do a lot of classes with the public, to realtors, to mortgage brokers, to educate about what we do as appraisers. And the last couple of years, I've followed these classes, and they're all over the counties, Lane County, Coos County, Douglas County, Lincoln County, that I've taught at. I asked some of the final questions. Hey, have you heard about this new program, PREA? Do you know what it's about? I'd like to get some public input, because we're trying to understand what you all and educate the public. And there's very passionate on both sides. There's a lot of people for it and a lot of people against. I don't hear a whole lot of the middle ground. Like, seems like it's one or the other. And personally, from my side, looking at a residential, we do a lot of work. Date of death, attorneys, estates, CPAs, also mortgage lending. So we are expected to do a lot. We're supposed to have geographical competency. The concern that I've always had with PREA, as I've tried to learn more and more about it, is that there's no in-the-field training on how to measure a house, how to see it, how to smell it, how to know what dry rot is, or what you're smelling for mold or anything else. And the problem that I find with that is that's kind of what the field experience was a part of as a traditional model. And PREA is, the more I've learned about PREA for the education standpoint, it's great. And I too thought the minimum was 3 appraisals, and I guess it is the minimum, but the program that's out right now being instituted is about 26 or so appraisals. That's substantial. That's enough computer work, I think, in my own personal opinion. But I cannot ever, or have not been able to get over this hump of, you've never seen a house, you've never walked through a house. And I liken this to 2 people walk through the hospital entry door, both wearing their jackets that say MD on them. One of them's done practicals and done training and in the field and has touched and felt patients and pulses and can study those things and has a tactile feel. The other's done it all online. And when they walk through there, Joe Q. Public looks at both and says, they're both doctors. I don't know the difference, so I trust them both. And personally, I know which doctor I would choose, and I'm not even going to say which one, but I know what I choose. So the concern that I have, which might be with what Ann is saying somewhat, is that, when somebody has their shingle, whether they decide to go work for somebody else, whether they have their own business, so that I get past that. I know USPAP, we have the competency. I know that that's the rule, and we're supposed to adhere to that. That's the threshold. But I have a problem with the public trust when I talk, and these are the comments I get from the public is, well, how do they know this? How do they know this? How do they know what 7-foot ceiling heights? And yes, there's part of the book side of it, but I'm talking about the practical side. So again, that's just my personal opinion on that. I wish there was some type of hybrid out there that offered both. Chad, go ahead.
As a matter of fact, thank you. So there is, in fact, it came up in our last board meeting, Jeff. We were talking about property data collectors, PDCs.
Mhm.
There is going to be I don't have a crystal ball, but based on what I know about Fannie and Freddie and the GSEs and the movement to technology, there is very likely in the future going to be mostly bifurcated or hybrid appraisal processes, at least on the lower end residential stuff that's lower risk. If it has an appraisal and it doesn't qualify for a waiver or something, alternative, very likely what we consider to be a full appraisal today will include some form of the appraiser's brain is best spent in the office, to tell you the truth, right? The analysis and all the research that we do, as opposed to the field work, which is more mechanical property inspection type stuff. There is a push to move toward using these property data collectors on the residential side. That's really where that's focused. So just as in terms of a point of clarity, that appraisal process that we're all used to doing, where we go out, we get in our car, we drive out to, it was Rainier County or Hood River or wherever far-flung place they wanted to send me, and go inspect the property and have eyes on the property. There will still be that process, but it's very likely going to move away from the appraiser doing that portion of the work and more towards what the lender would engage, or maybe it's going to be the appraiser that engages them in terms of the assignment conditions, but qualified individuals also that perform that property data collection process. So just in terms of that being part of PREA or not, the appraisal process that we're all very familiar with, very likely in the future, is going to move to something different than the appraiser going to the property and measuring.
Can I ask you a question for clarification?
Yeah.
So are what you are saying, so like a mortgage lender is going to have an unstaffed property data collector?
I'm
Is that
not
what you're saying?
Probably it will be more through the appraisal management companies if it goes that route.
Okay,
Generally
so
speaking,
if
I would
an
imagine if there's
appraisal
an AMC involved in the process.
where they have somebody that goes and collects the data for you, like they do the inspection and all that kind of stuff, and then they send you this information and you're supposed to believe everything they say.
Well,
And then you're gonna provide an opinion of value on a property you've never even seen before.
And
What are
sign
we
your
doing
name to the certification. And sign your
And
name
then
to
you're
the certification. Yeah.
that you didn't expect it, and that you're going to make an opinion of value on a property you're not even seeing.
That happens all the time,
It
Julie.
happens.
That's an extraordinary assumption. It's very common, yeah. At least in the residential side, it is common.
And that is a phenomena that already exists on the commercial side as well. And I really do appreciate the comments. Part of this, I think, is that the people that are in this conversation are conscientious professionals that I hope are toward the top of the field of what we have. But what PREA offers us as a profession, it is incumbent upon us to preserve the public's trust in our industry. And this is the first time that we really will have uniformity of a training regimen that our customers, that our clients, and that the public can understand and have some rationale behind. And certainly it's been said several times, and I believe that this is true, that holding a license does not qualify one for all of the, this is the existing programs as well. Having a license itself does not necessarily qualify one to do all sorts of complex work. But in terms of passing the bar for a minimum threshold, providing that uniformity of experience to homeowners, to property owners, and to our clients, I think is a leg up on the way that we've been running things before, which really does leave a lot in the hands of the supervisor and does not create any sort of consistency of training.
Owen, I agree with everything you just said, except if that standard creates something not good at the other end of it. And so I agree with everything you said, but we need to find out if what it creates in a standard is not going to degrade the industry. That's what I would say about that.
I would say that the standard that they're setting is an opportunity for appraisers that are coming into the industry to get trained on lots of different types of properties. Right now, as a residential appraiser, if a trainee comes into them and that supervisor only appraises single family HUD homes, that is all they're going to get trained on. they are not going to have any competency on anything outside of what they're trained on.
Manufactured housing,
Manufactured, yeah,
two-to-four-family.
any of those.
Condominium.
They're not going to get trained on that, right? So then we run into that same situation where, okay, now they're a certified appraiser because they've been supervised. They're going to go out and hang their shingle and go out and try to do a manufactured home. I can tell you, because I teach a manufactured home class, that that is going to cause all sorts of issues with public trust, right? So our current process of just having the supervisor process, where they're being trained in a situation where they're only being trained on what their supervisor knows, is an issue.
We need a vote.
Is there any other comment from the board members that are online there? I see, no. Since there was one more thing before, I guess we'll take a vote. As far as my comment goes, it was brought up, I guess, for the record that 34 states have adopted it. Apparently there's 16 that have not. So just because some have doesn't, and some haven't, I'm not sure that's evidence of, well, we just do it like lemmings, we just follow along. I don't subscribe to that theory in my life. But with that being said, is there any more discussion on the board before we? Okay.
I'd only like to clarify that my intent in bringing that up was to say that this is not something that is entirely brand new and hasn't been ever considered. That's all. I agree that we don't have to do what everybody else does.
Well, wait a minute. It isn't brand new. This is absolutely brand new. Nobody's even graduated from this program as of the last time that we spoke in our last meeting. Nobody's even graduated from this thing, so it absolutely is brand new. It has never been tested in the market with somebody that has a license having gone through the PREA program. So it is brand new, and I don't feel like we need to jump off a cliff just because other states are jumping off the cliff.
I do believe that there have been some graduates since.
I believe they graduated. I don't know that we can get information from Scott at this point or not, but I don't believe that any of them have actually sat for their exam.
Correct.
I don't
think that's
know. I don't know if they've gone through that process.
Yeah.
But yes, they have graduated.
Yes.
All right, well, barring any other discussion, I think that, do I make a motion on
You
it?
can motion to table, you can motion to reopen for public comment, you can motion to adopt as written.
Oh, boy.
You guys all have all kinds of motions you could
What
make.
are you gonna do?
And it's
Well,
not just you, every board member in the room has the right to make a motion and or second.
sure, I think if we're done with discussion, then do I suggest a motion?
I would like to make a motion
Okay.
that we move to adopt the PREA as stated in the board statutes, proposed board statutes.
I have two here. There's a motion 1 or a motion 2 that reads slightly different. One is kind of as it was modified after the administrative rules were done, which is motion number 2, which is probably more in line because there was some
Based on the
administrative stuff that was.
Right, correct. So it would be motion number 2, correct.
You want to read that?
You can read it out.
Okay, so what's being suggested is to adopt the proposed administrative rules OAR 161-020-0061 and OAR 161-020-0160 as amended to replace the words approved/approved with accepted/accepted to adopt administrative rules allowing the practical application of real estate appraisal PREA program to satisfy the experience requirements for state licensed and state certified residential appraisers.
That was a mouthful. I'll
It is.
second.
So we have a motion and a second. So we take a vote?
That would be vote.
Jeff,
No.
Lori,
Yes.
Julie,
No.
Annie,
No.
Ed,
Abstain.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Don't have that.
Okay, so that is 3 noes, 3 yeses, and 1 abstain.
Motion does
So
not carry.
the motion does not carry.
You can table it for another day if you like, or reopen for public comments on the rules, either way.
Okay, well, is there a motion then to table it for another meeting, but to open for comment? Is that a bifurcated? I
No,
apologize.
so the motion didn't carry. That motion just died, so.
Can I make a motion to reopen for public comment?
Yes, I'll second that motion
So what's the,
to reopen.
what does it mean to make a motion to table it? What does that mean?
Well, there's no motion to table anything. The motion didn't carry because it was an even vote.
Right,
So it just dies basically on the
okay.
agenda. Now there's a motion to reopen the public comment period. for the
Or
rules.
what was the other one?
It just
that you
goes, basically it was just either it's died and you table it and you guys can
Or open
tell
it
me
back
you want
up
to bring it up another day, or you can open it back up for public comment. But as of right now, there's no more public input and the motion to adopt didn't carry. So
Okay.
But I
That's where
believe that
that's where it dies.
we now have a motion and a second.
to
To
reopen.
Open up for
reopen
public
for
comment.
comment.
Do we need to have,
Owen with the motion and Jeff, you were with this.
do we need to have a time frame for this motion?
I would identify one
Right.
if I were you.
Before the next board meeting? So we want to put a counter?
I think board staff would probably be in a better position to tell us
Yeah, Chad, what would you think?
how long it's gonna take to make that happen.
In terms of scheduling a public hearing, we could get something scheduled on the record if you all want to just, identify a date that you'd like to have the hearing. None of the board members have to attend. But we can do that hearing as soon as this Friday, next Monday, next Friday.
How much notice are we required to give?
I would probably recommend at least a week's notice. 2 weeks to be safe unless Raul has some more input.
I have different input if that's okay.
Yeah.
So just taking a look at how the motion broke down, it's a tie, there's one abstention. So my suggestion would be is that if you're gonna reopen up anything to take any comment, I think you should provide some direction to Chad or perhaps communicate to the public. What is it that as a board you are looking for? Because if you're just reopening and you're gonna get more comments that are basically the same in favor or opposed, I'm not sure that the breakdown of the motion is going to change unless the board member who abstained does the tiebreaker.
Mhm.
Right. So part of what I heard in the discussion is there appears to be some questions regarding Korea being new and what information might be out there regarding how or why other states have adopted it, maybe how that has been working out. Maybe Chad could obtain more information from, I think there were some questions from Scott in terms of, or not from Scott, that might have been directed to Scott in terms of what he could provide regarding where as a nation.
Statistics and things, sure.
I think that's part of the information that I was hearing from some board members you would be interested in knowing more about. Is there anything
So
else?
can we change that then, rather than opening it for public comments, opening it to get more information to kind of answer some of those questions for the board members?
And I think to the extent that Chad would need to reach out to somebody outside of the board, I would just say, open the rules for public comment. So that you're providing everyone the opportunity to provide comment. Part of the reason I also mentioned that is, I think Julie made some reference to speaking to some individuals. If anybody out there has any input regarding the proposed Korea adoption, the official way to communicate their position is to make a public comment in writing to the board.
Yeah, so I think we need a little bit more than 2 weeks.
Sure.
That's my opinion.
So
Just
is there any way that Korea can be adopted with some types of safeguards in place as far as like you have to have hours that you're being trained on the ground?
Or a
Like
demonstration appraisal.
everybody else, like everybody else has had to do. Is there any way, like, I think I'd feel more accepting if there was some more safeguards in place rather than some AI generated stuff with 5 people for the whole entire country. Like, what is, is that even a possibility? If it's not, that's fine. I'd just like to know if there's a possibility.
There's a lot of different possibilities that you guys have as a board. In terms of where to be careful of, we don't want to have less than the minimum AQB criteria for licensure.
No, I'm not ever talking about less
I know,
than. I'm talking about more than.
But that's the area that I'm concerned with, is not making it our administrative rules or our licensing requirements less than the AQB standard, because then we will be accepted from participating in federally related transactions in Oregon, and that just is a mess.
Yeah.
As far as adding to, yes, in fact, for years, Oregon's licensure requirements, the hours exceeded the national criteria. You as a board absolutely have the ability to say, if in terms of touching the PREA rules themselves might be challenging in terms of aligning with the AQB criteria. However, in terms of our licensure requirements, there could be a stated specific thing that says for people that go to PREA, you will be required to provide the board with a demonstration appraisal, which will be examined to verify USPAP compliance, which is a part of our current licensing process.
Yeah.
That's in addition to what's written.
Yeah.
That would be more than the criteria, but that is absolutely an allowable thing the board can do. And other than
or
explaining
100 hours of experience under a supervisory
or something along that.
I would like to propose I'd like to propose that we give this some thought.
Okay.
And discuss a little bit more at the next board meeting what this looks like.
What do we, so our next.
I would like to have a chance to think about this and think here's the federal standards, and can we adopt something more that gives us a little bit of security going forward. I understand that the residential people are excited to have this program. However, I'd like to think about what would make me feel more comfortable to get on board with what you guys are proposing and go from there.
Yeah.
But I'd like a chance to think about it. A week is
Sure.
not, I have a lot of things in my
Fair,
brain.
fair.
A week is not enough time for me to
First week of September, because we've got the board meeting as scheduled right now. I think it's October 23rd, if my brain calendar is right. It's the third week should be of October. So if we were to have a public hearing early September following, say, Labor Day, something like that.
Yeah.
That would give you all, that could be the cutoff for comments. And that's a month and a half from today, or a month and a week from today or so, right?
By that time, we'll probably have some folks that are licensed through the PREA.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Lori, I was going to say the same thing. It's very possible that by that time we'll have some data that we can actually look at, and maybe some people have graduated, and we can find out what they know and what they don't know. So
I know that kind of data, but there's somebody that may have graduated and sat for the test. Yeah.
Stephanie, did you have something you need?
Just to make a suggestion, as far as public hearing, wanting to schedule that, if we do that for a month out, that would land us August 23rd, that's Friday. And then if we want to do another board meeting in September, that'll give us a chance to distribute any more public comments, anything else we've received.
To schedule a special.
I'd like to
meeting
move
in
it into
September.
September.
A public hearing?
Yeah, in
Okay.
September.
Okay.
So, sorry, oh, there you are, Owen. I'm trying to clarify, make sure everybody can hear on this microphone. But I think we're trying to figure out when we want to do the public hearing meeting, so we have time to discuss. I think we're trying to also figure out some time as board members to see what would help maybe push it one way or the other.
Yeah.
I
can
break a tiebreaker.
On that microphone. Can I just ask I hope a simple procedural question to Chad, which is that if we adopt rules that are in excess of federal standards and other states, does that pose any challenges for reciprocity requests?
I don't believe in terms of reciprocity that it would necessarily affect that, because we're basing our reciprocity on the fact that our licensure is equivalent, not identical to other states.
Okay,
and as long as they meet the minimum criteria and we meet the minimum criteria, I believe that makes us equivalent. There would be some conversation as far as nationally about exceeding criteria and needing to explain that to the appraisal subcommittee at some point.
Yeah, we will have to explain ourselves. I just want to make that real clear.
But Chad, aren't we already in excess? I thought we were in terms of.
So we were, and that was part of the rulemaking activities that occurred last, I believe it was July was when they were adopted, which aligned the criteria as far as the experience requirements and the time for the experience.
Okay, so it took it
Was-
down.
we exceeded the criteria in terms of, in fact, when I got credentialed, I had to have 2,000 hours of experience in no less than 18 months. As of today, and as of July of last year, we aligned that to the AQB criteria, which states for certified residential, it's 1,500 hours in no less than 12 months, which essentially was what we had required for licensed appraisers. So it was essentially that about a third more up until about June. So yeah, we in the past have exceeded the criteria and had reciprocity with other states. And we continue to have that today, even if we're aligned or if they exceed or vice versa. But the key is meeting the minimum AQB criteria.
It was brought up about possible experience, and it was floated, just talking here, 100 hours and this and that, supervisory. Is it something we could just throw out there to think about when we're talking about this? If any certified appraiser or commercial, not certified, would look at experience that doesn't actually have to be a supervisor.
I
That makes sense?
understand
So it was kind of floated out like to have 100 hours or something under a supervisor.
Mm.
What I was suggesting, what if you had a certified or just a general 100 hours, but they don't have the supervisory?
Not identified under that
Because
individual
all you're
as
doing
a registered trainee.
You're just reviewing the competency of maybe field experience? Or
Okay, so if I was to take on somebody, so I'm a certified general, if I was to take on, I wouldn't even be taking on somebody. They would come to my office, well, if I have an office, but I don't have an office because I work for the state. They would come in and they would say, like, I'm a licensee, and I say, oh, okay, come work with me. And then I would just be like watching over them, but I'm not an assistant. They're not my assistant. I'm not a supervisor, but I am watching what they do. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to clarify what
Okay.
you were thinking.
Okay.
Also, yes.
Okay.
In terms of before approval to take the licensing exam.
Gotcha.
Okay,
Okay.
so the other.
So there are options. There are options out there that we can look at that I think might make some of us feel a little bit more comfortable with this. But I mean, that's a great idea. I'd like to have a chance to think about that kind of stuff and
Yeah.
what would make me feel comfortable where I would be like a proponent or
And
be
another,
okay with this.
another option, and this isn't, I'm not advocating for any direction, but another option that may be cleaner in terms of finding supervisor versus not supervisor, or does that, now that Perea person have to now register as a trainee under Oregon rules to go work for a supervisor and get the experience, as opposed to that, so Mississippi has a practicum program that they've acted, to basically Perea, that they've had in place for 4 years, maybe a little bit less than that.
I don't think it's not 4 years, no.
No.
No, and Melissa's more than happy to come and
Melissa Bond.
speak to it. Yeah, she's more than happy.
Maybe
to
I
come
will
speak to
loop
our-
Melissa Bond then in on our next board meeting.
Although it's a completely different topic.
She is, well, it is.
Yeah,
That's a
it is.
state-sponsored practicum program. But in terms, yeah, so
But she
so
is
it's not
helping.
necessarily a
Melissa is-
direct.
I'm sorry, you asked who she was. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt
no.
you. She's just recently rolled off of the AQB, the appraiser, or excuse me, the ASB, the Appraiser Standards Board. She developed a practicum course that is nationally renowned. We've served
Was
with her
just for a
many
state.
years.
The Mississippi is the one
But
that's.
she's
used,
getting,
yeah.
she's working with other states to get
To
it set up in
expand
their
it.
states as well.
What is she?
Yeah, what is this?
What are you talking about though?
So it's a practicum similar to Perea, but it includes in-classroom hours.
It's,
And they have mentorships, the whole thing. It's kind of it's almost a hybrid between supervisor, trainee, direct,
now,
and Perea. It's kind of a hybrid.
and I could be wrong, but I don't, does practicum actually, it doesn't replace the education, it only replaces
The experience.
experience.
So
Yes.
so it does provide some level of boots on the ground because
It's all,
it's
yes, yes.
it's state run and she's doing it in the state of
Yeah.
Mississippi.
Yeah, but she is working with other states.
To try and
To get
adopt
this-
the same,
let's-
not adopt, but.
The
to
challenge
try and-
there being
try and get
resources
that.
for us to do
Yeah.
that.
Thank you.
Hang on, board. Here we go. I think we should try and get some information, Chad, if you can, between now and the next board meeting from this lady,
Melissa.
Mhm.
from the state, any information,
And I
and so that we
believe
can
the
understand.
institute could probably probably provide us with some.
I'll reach out to
Any information that you can get from anywhere, I think would be.
More and better info. You
Yes.
got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I think really where you're at now is figuring out a time or a date and just so that it's totally transparent for the next public hearing to receive comments on the Perea rules.
And the suggestion was, do we have a motion then for what day of the month?
Do you have to have a motion for?
You don't, no, so, but that's just in terms of scheduling.
Well,
No, the motion was to reopen for public comment and that happened.
So let's do it in September, right? Sound the general feel?
Yeah.
are we,
Looking for after Labor Day probably would be best.
so September right now, as far as our team board is wide open, except for Wednesday the 4th, which is our EOC schedule.
Enforcement
When
Committee.
is the Labor Day somewhere in there?
It's the 4th, I think.
So Labor Day is accepted. And this is.
Wait, go ahead, Raul.
So just want to clarify, I don't think there's been a vote on the motion.
Hasn't there? Okay.
Oh, no, we've had a motion, we haven't voted on it.
Got it.
I
We got
think
that
there's
side.
consensus, but I would just want to.
On the
We
record.
had Owen
There's
a
been
motion. and-
Yeah, can I withdraw my motion or do we need to vote it down?
You're already down in my minutes. So, okay, I'll open it up to a vote. Jeff,
Yes?
Lori,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Somewhere on September 15th look good for anybody for throwing out a day?
That's a
Okay.
Sunday.
Not that a good day?
What's the second Monday in September?
It's the 9th.
Want to do the 9th? How do you feel about the 9th?
The EOC, no, it's not.
That's
That's
Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
Sure, that would be great for me.
Deal? Okay. So we'll get the notice of hearing out here shortly. No, that's that carried.
All right.
Okay.
Barring any other parts of that, we're gonna move
Yeah,
on.
I want to say thanks for listening to me and letting me have a little bit of time to think about this. So that's all. Am I allowed to say thank you in a board meeting?
I think so. You
Okay.
just did.
Just checking.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to the old business. And I get to pass it on to Chad for the budget report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So, as we've all kind of known, the business has been not declining, but it's in a state of hibernation, activity-wise, if you want to put it that way. As a result of the changes to the market, it's pretty clear that licensing volumes have changed, and that is our direct revenue. So, as expected, this year's revenue to date is about, well, it's slightly higher than 10% lower than we were at this time in the 21 to 23 biennium. So essentially, and it's not good to average the incomes over the bienniums just because they change, because AMCs renew at different times and volumes of appraisers renew every 2 years at different times. But our 2021 to 23, our revenue today from 21 to 23, well, the 21 to 23 total revenue averaged out about 1.16 per year. Currently, right now, as of this, up to this point in the biennium, we're at about 900 for revenue. So that's just a little bit less than, and remember, we're at the halfway point. And the other thing is that the AMCs, we have a large number of AMCs, for whatever reason, it's just coincidence, that a good number of our AMCs renew in the 24, 25 calendar year. So that in terms of revenues being off this year versus next, it may not be as significant because of the AMCs that renew next year. The other thing I wanted to let all of you know is that in light of what we knew was coming, which is a slight downturn in licensing volumes, we have been looking at cutting costs. The board does have a pretty robust reserve that we've attempted to leave intact. It may be necessary over the next 12 months to tap into that, just depending on, again, licensing volumes and incoming revenues. But we are looking at, in fact, last board meeting, I believe this board meeting, I've got a little bit of, well, I guess I'm not updating you on our cost cutting this month. But we are looking at reducing the office space, some different technological improvements that we can do that would replace an outdated and expensive phone system. Just a few things wherever we can shave off that extra. We're looking at not traveling as far as staff for the remainder of this year. So there are things that we can do and are doing to lessen the impact of that reduced revenues. So hopefully by the end of next biennium, we will not be in the red. Let's see. And I think other than questions or comments, that's pretty well the budget report.
Any comments from any board members? Okay, moving on then, Chad,
All right.
licensing and AMC report.
Next report. All right. So these numbers were pulled as of the end of the quarter, which is June 30th. So they're a few days old. But as of June 30th, 2024, we had 607 active certified general appraisers in Oregon. We had 627 active certified residential appraisers in Oregon. And the number of licensed appraisers, state licensed appraisers, is much lower, 131. And that tells me that there's probably a shift in terms of the users of appraisal services toward the higher certified license levels. But our total licensure numbers for 2024, as of June 30th, were 1,365 active appraisers in Oregon. Inactive appraisers, we have 22 certified general inactives. We have 27 certified residential inactives, of which I am one, and 16 inactive licensed appraisers for a total of 65 inactive credential appraisers, maintaining their licensure but not active with their licenses. We currently have 73 registered appraiser assistants. That number is down about 30% from this time last year. That number in 2023 was about 40 less, which is roughly, again, about 30%. So there is somewhat, you can see in terms of the reported numbers, for the last 2 to 3 years, there is a decline in the number of registered assistants that are coming in. And based on my phone conversations with people that are looking to become appraisers, that's directly because of the difficulty with supervisors. Locating a good one, locating one at all, and then secondary to that, locating one that's going to teach people what they need to stay in business and out of trouble. That's the big challenge. Registered AMCs, we have currently, or as of June 30th, we had 99 registered AMCs. That number has declined, again, about 10% from this time last year. And that was a decline also from 2022. And again, I think it's consolidation of AMCs probably is the primary cause of that. Lori probably has more insight as far as why that might be happening. But that would be my guess, is that that's just the natural market at work. AMCs operating and being closed or being absorbed or new ones opening. So currently we have 99 of those. Are there any questions on the licensing report?
I think as a comment, interesting, if you follow most of these numbers, they follow from 2021 to 24. Total active licenses, AMCs, it seems like they almost are mirroring each other as far as a decline or up whenever there's a spike or down. But that's just a comment, it seems interesting.
Which is also another mirror and a good indicator of why that actualized, the received revenue is also about 10% off. You can, it's very easy picture to draw with the licensing numbers, yeah.
Very linear.
Yep.
Do I tell you to do that? Sure. Okay, so then the next would be the enforcement report?
Yes, okay. So these are developed, as essentially it's reported as of today, but reported for the last quarter ended June 30th. So in the last quarter, which was April 1 through June 30th, the board closed 13 cases. As of June 30th, we had 101 open active cases. And the status of those, we have no AMC cases as of right now, which is really a good sign. We have, of the 101 cases total, we have 5 that we're still waiting for responses from the appraisers. We send out a notice. They have a time period where they're required to respond, produce documentation and things. So 5 of them are in that stage. 88 of the cases are pending investigation or pending assignment to an investigator. 5 are in process investigations, and 3 of the cases are before you folks today for approval. As of June 30th, we had 77 of our 101 cases that were over a year old, which is the number that investigators and I are working really hard to change, as well as all EOC members. Of the 77 cases that are a year old, 69 are still needing to be assigned to an investigator to really, in earnest, start the investigation, digging through documentation. So all of these cases at this point have gone through the vetting process. meaning that the board staff has looked at them and determined that not necessarily that violations have occurred or something went wrong, just that the investigator needs access to the appraiser's work file to verify that they're compliant. And in that case, which is a good number of cases, once we get that work file, we're able to see that they supported the things they said in the appraisal. And at that point, then I either bring it to you folks on the EOC with a compliance report recommending dismissal, or that can be an administrative decision as well if there's just really no grounds to move forward with anything. But
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How long does it take typically for a complaint that's been filed until it ends up at the board? Do you have an estimate of time? Like, is it 8 months? Is it 6 months?
Oh,
Do you
much
know?
longer than that, Julie. We have a
Yeah.
4-year backlog right now.
No, I know
We're
that,
closing out 2020 cases as of right
I
now.
understand that. But if you had to estimate the amount of time it takes, I'm just kind of curious.
Under normal circumstances?
Yes,
What we shoot for is less than 12 months.
less than 12?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just-
And the high priority cases in terms of, see, a lot of the cases that are before the board just waiting in the wings right now, a lot of what appraisers do is just procedural error. And to be honest with you, it relates a lot to supervisor training or lack thereof. And the variability of all of that, that's the direct result of, that is our caseload right now. So there's a good number of cases there where we may not have anything intentionally wrong or ethically wrong or even competency related. It might just be small procedural things like, well, we forgot to explain something in the appraisal report and that triggered a need to now look at the work file because it was brought to our attention. So now we need to look into it. So a good number of cases are probably in that category. The ones that are more high profile or more critical to public trust, I guess is a better way to put it, or public safety, go straight to the front of the line. So the cases that pose a clear danger to the public or affect the public trust in terms of, even if this is an allegation, we need to look at this and see whether or not this is occurring and put a stop to it right now. Those are the cases that we're closing well inside of that 12-month mark. That's been a real intentional focus. So other than those cases where the investigators are focusing on is on the old cases so that it brings us up current. But while they're doing that, we're also triaging in the high profile, high importance cases that, where there's allegations of real wrongdoing there or intentional misleading things. Those are critical. And just like to your point with Berea, that's what we're here to do. It's not necessarily, one of the former EOC members used to have he was fond of saying, why are we chasing jaywalkers when we have bank robbers to deal with? Mm-hmm. That is, and it's not a great analogy because it's not a one-to-one analogy, but that's kind of the focus is that those are the older cases are very important, but they aged for a reason because they were not critically right now a danger to the public. So those are the ones that move to the front of the line. But other than that, the 77 cases are those ones that now we need to go through and procedurally, because it's our obligation, identify the things that went wrong, report those to the enforcement committee, give the enforcement committee the information that it needs to make recommendations to you, the board, and then in the process at some point, hopefully I negotiate a settlement, which, I think I've been pretty clear. My preference is to educate folks as opposed to punish folks. But sometimes there's a reason we have rules that include civil penalties, and it's for a lot of that stuff that's important to impress upon people that this is not allowed. So 69 allegations are currently pending that are over a year old that need to be assigned. All five of our current investigations, as you can see from the two numbers, the 5 that we're investigating actively right now are from that older group, from pre-2022. And all three cases before you folks today are among those older, over 1-year-old cases for closure.
Seems like since you've become the administrator, the trend has been that it keeps going lower and lower. So
we're trying.
Those cases are
resources, and we're also going to be addressing resources here in my administrator's report a little bit later. But yeah, that's the goal, is to move the needle a little bit every day.
Okay, so now we're going to move to the approval of board orders. I'm going to try and get this right.
So Jeff, if you just want to read the case numbers and then talk about the action taken, and then ask for because you still have to have a motion to adopt, a second, and then and a vote amongst yourselves.
You got it. Okay, so we're gonna move for the approval of board orders. Start off with case number 20-2445. The action taken was dismissed with education. Is there any discussion? Okay, do we have a motion to approve the board order as written? Is that right?
Yes.
All motion to approve the board order as written?
I'll second that.
Okay. Jeff,
Yes?
Lori,
Yes.
Julie,
Yes.
Annie,
Is she here?
She is.
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. The next case number is 22-2539. The action taken is to require compliance counseling. Is there any discussion on this case?
Can you explain to me what compliance counseling means?
So essentially, there are things that we're working with that address issues that are non-disciplinary. So in the event that there were things that occurred that need to be addressed or identified and should probably not happen again, but don't necessarily rise to the level of an ethical violation or competency issue, where it looks like the appraiser, again, is going to benefit more from either education or a conversation as opposed to here's a civil penalty and be scared of us and don't do it again. Those are in those cases that don't involve serious, I guess the terminology would be serious violations. There can be a few violations of some minor stuff or potential violations of some minor things that don't require us to issue, like a suspension would be significant discipline. Civil penalties would be reported significant discipline. A downgrade of license or removing somebody's certified or their supervising appraiser endorsement. That would be very significant in my mind, to put a word to it, discipline that affects the appraiser's licensure. There are a lot of circumstances that come up where we need to communicate that things should have been done differently, but don't need to do it in a way that affects the appraiser's record or costs them money, or is an undue burden on the appraiser. So in the light of trying to reduce our caseload, address these cases in a way that the appraisal subcommittee is going to see, yes, we've considered issues that were brought up, the board has acted in the best interest of the public and protected the public and addressed issues. The guidance on that is pretty open-ended. So other than very serious things, there are pretty specific steps that we need to go through. Aside from that, the tools that we have at our disposal can include compliance counseling, meaning it could be a phone call or a series of phone calls to address issues that were called out in a compliance report. So there could be one point, if there's only a list of 2 or 3 things, it could be one phone call. If there's 2 or 3 things in standard 1, and then we've got a pretty significant standard 2 thing that resulted from the standard 1 stuff, and then maybe we have a record keeping thing, maybe there's 2 phone calls that address it. And that's just kind of a moving target based on what the investigator and or I determine is going to be the best course of action as far as what that person needs. It's a consent order, so it's a consensual agreement between the board and the appraiser that there's compliance counseling, and like in this case would be a phone call. The other tool the board has at its disposal is audits, formal compliance audits. So we go through a case, it's investigated, a report goes to the enforcement committee, they vote and decide that yes, an objective basis exists to believe that more likely than not these things probably occurred. Then it comes back to me to decide, how can we settle this, or can we settle this? And it's part of the appraisal subcommittee's policy statement that appraisers should have some input or some voice in terms of the outcome of any disciplinary action, and at least an opportunity to negotiate that with the regulatory board. So that's where that process comes in. Part of that process with me is, okay, well, we can see that you've been an appraiser, just as I'm making up a circumstance right now, just to illustrate a point. We noticed through the investigation that the appraiser's been licensed here for 2 years or a year, but they've been licensed elsewhere and they reciprocated in. And it looks like they just really didn't understand what they were needing to do to produce credible results on that property. None of it was intentional, but it appears that maybe there was a falling down on the part of the supervisor to teach them how to appropriately support an opinion of highest and best use, or how to credibly develop a capitalization rate. If it looks like those are missing pieces that are procedural that we can fix with education, we can either do a multi-step compliance audit process. It could involve just one audit of an actual work product. It could involve audits over a period of time, quarterly, to see if improvements are being made based on education that was required in some of these agreements. That's another way that we can deal with things. That's again, it's conditionally dismissing on the grounds that they meet these certain terms. And if they fail to meet those terms, it ceases to be a conditional dismissal, and we go right back to, well, you had an agreement with the board that was violated, and that in and of itself is a problem. So it's not that anything's being walked away from or swept under the rug. It's how do we solve these cases in a time frame that's acceptable, with an outcome that's acceptable to the board and the public, but also not ruining careers. And we're not here to stand in the way of people getting into the profession or staying in the profession. We're here to enforce the rules as they exist and protect the public from people that refuse to follow those. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Chad, as a point of technicality here, on the votes that are coming up, do I need to abstain?
Oh, from the, that would be a personal decision, but there is some precedent for that.
Okay. I think I better stay consistent on that.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Any other discussion before we vote? So do we have to have a motion to vote?
It would be to adopt the order.
Okay,
settlement
sorry.
agreement for the.
This is for, just to reiterate, this is for case 22-2539, required compliance counseling. Was the action taken?
Looking for a motion.
Looking for a motion to approve that?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Jeff,
Yes?
Lori,
Yes.
Julie,
No,
Annie,
Abstain?
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Abstain.
Okay, motion still carries.
Motion carries. Okay. Moving on to the next case. This is case number 222540. The action taken is required compliance counseling. And is there any discussion about this case? Okay, already no discussion. Is there a motion to approve the?
I move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Jeff,
Yes?
Lori,
Yes.
Julie,
no,
Annie,
Abstain?
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Abstain.
Motion is approved. I guess now we're moving on to the administrator's report.
Yes, sir.
Back up to Chad.
Back to me, thank you. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is our efforts to collect data on the demographics of appraisers in Oregon. And it's basically part of a larger national conversation on the profession and removing barriers and increasing and improving diversity among appraisers so that our population more closely represents the population it serves. So before we can figure that out, we need to know who we are and where we are. And that's really the point of this demographic survey. To date, we really don't have enough responses to report meaningful numbers. Out of our total, I believe it's 1,503 licensees. So the survey went out to active appraisers as well as inactive appraisers, anybody on the licensure list. Out of those 1,503 email recipients, we've so far had about 450, not so far, about, it's exactly 458 responses, which is roughly a third, right? So I don't know that reporting demographics data on a third of the responses is really going to give us meaningful numbers. But as of right now, what we have is, in terms of the years licensed, it looks like the lion's share of appraisers, and this would make a lot of sense because state licensure did not really become required until, I believe it was 91. So we have a good number of our responses that state that they've been in the business before that. I believe it's So about 20 or so of the respondees have been in business prior to licensure existing. Following that, we've got the vast majority became licensed and still hold a license between 1991 and really about 2006 was the peak. And we all know what happened in 2006, 7, 8, 9. That was when the last market decline happened, and the appraiser populations, you can see, have declined since then, with another peak following the recovery. And we had actually almost as many appraisers get licensed between 2017 and 2024 as we did in the entirety between 2005 and 2014, really. So much longer time period in terms of licensure volumes. Recently, the last 4 years has started that upward trend again, with the exception being this year, we've issued 7 new licenses, but we're also only halfway through the year. Of the 458 responses, 397 of us identify as white or Caucasian, 28 preferred not to answer. We have 11 Hispanic or Latino appraisers in Oregon, 3 of Black or African American descent, 15 Asian or Pacific Islander identifications, and 7 identify as Indigenous or Native American or Alaska Native. So again, out of 1,503 appraisers, that I don't think as an appraiser, I would call that enough of a sample size for me to draw any conclusions yet, but it does certainly point in a direction. In terms of nation of origin, out of our 458 responses, 420 of us are native born to the United States here. We had 17 that preferred not to answer, and really it was just a smattering of other countries, 1 or 2 spread out over, I mean, we've got Canada, the Czech Republic, Eastern Europe, England, Germany, and these are all between 1 and 3 respondents. 1 Hungarian, we have 3 from Iran, 1 from Mexico, 1 from other Latin American countries, 2 from the Philippines. So but you can see the picture that's being drawn is that it's overwhelmingly, this is not a surprise, overwhelmingly Caucasian and overwhelmingly United States born appraisers in Oregon that are currently credentialed. In terms of our age groups, and this is another one that is going to bear looking at in terms of the future of the profession. In terms of the current appraisers, we have 120 of the respondees. We have 126 that fall into the age group that I am, which is 45 to 54. We have 120, which is the next largest sample size, between 55 to 64. We have 96 that are between 65 to 74, 22 that are 75 and older. And in terms of newer, call it new blood to the profession, only 57 are between the ages of 35 to 44, and 32 are between 25 to 34. 1 right now is between the age of 18 to 24. So 1 youngster coming in. It's interesting to be able to say that now. 1 youngster coming into the profession as of right now with the responses. So that is the age breakdown. As far as veteran status, we have 400 of our 458 respondees that are non-veteran, 41 that are veterans, and 17 that prefer not to answer. In terms of differently abled or disabled individuals, of the 458 responses, 424 of us identify as non-disabled or non-differently abled. 18 of us identified as disabled or differently abled, and 16 preferred not to answer the question. And again, these are surveys that are optional. You're not mandatory, required to respond as a licensee. It does help us do our jobs, helps us draw a picture of what we are, who we're serving, and where in terms of context for you folks, where to go from there. What changes, if any, need to be made to change those numbers, if they need changing at all. In terms of our responses, the region of Oregon that we all reported from the most, in terms of either being located in or servicing, is overwhelmingly the Portland metro area at 149 of us. Let's see, 10 reported in the northwest portion of Oregon. That would mean, Astoria down probably about Seaside, and over toward the Coast Range would be that region. Coastal, meaning the entirety of the coast market, is 17 of us. The Willamette Valley, we have 80 of us that service the Willamette Valley. That would probably include Salem, Eugene, Lane County down through our breadbasket. We have one appraiser reporting out from the Columbia Gorge, one in the Cascades, being the foothills or the mountains, either side of them. 33 are located in Central Oregon, which makes a lot of sense with Bend being as rapidly growing and popular as it is. We have 12 in Eastern Oregon, and 40 operating out of Southern Oregon or located in Southern Oregon, that being Roseburg, Medford, Grants Pass, down in that area, Ashland. 6 in Southeastern Oregon, that would essentially be the Oregon Outback, which is a beautiful place that I'd love to go and haven't actually yet. Been a lifelong Oregonian and haven't made it over there yet. Let's see, 7 preferred not to answer, and 113 of us identified as covering regions other than Oregon. So that would be our out-of-state licensees, reciprocals, people that maybe held a license, or these would be all license holders, but potentially, you could be licensed in Montana and come over here for a wind farm assignment or something and still be licensed after that occurs. So we've got a good number of reciprocal people that operate outside of Oregon as well as in Oregon too. And the last, this is just reporting on the regions, other, which essentially we have 4 Arizonans, 22 Californians, 2 or 3 individuals from Colorado, either located in or operating in Colorado as well as Oregon, 6 in or around Florida, 1 Hawaiian, 11 from Idaho, and then the other, there's a general small number of appraisers in other states other than Washington, which makes it's another state that makes a lot of sense. That California and Washington are the 2 largest states that we have reciprocal people in that are maybe not physically located here, but do work in Oregon, being the border states. We've reciprocated with Washington and California for, I think, as long as we've had licensure. Other states have followed suit since then. And then we had 11 that chose not to answer their region of coverage or the regional location. So those are essentially the demographic survey numbers to date. We will be sending out additional emails. And to those licensees still on the meeting with us here, if you've already answered the survey, feel free to ignore it. If you haven't answered the survey yet and you don't want to, feel free to ignore it. But any information that you can give us about our demographic makeup, location, age, where you're from, those are all very helpful things to set context for how best to serve the public. And that's my sell on the demographic survey. So as I said, not quite large enough for totals to draw conclusions on our total population, but we're working on it and getting there.
Looks like the next is the website.
Yes, sir. Okay,
so,
and I did want to let you folks know one of the things that we are working on to streamline processes here internally, but also as a service to our licensees and the general public, is to join the growing number of states that allow online document submission and online license submittal, renewals, initial licensure, payment portal. So all of that stuff, as of right now, we have all of that available on the website, but it is somewhat low tech in the fact that you have to download a PDF or open it in your browser and fill it out, print it out, and then send it to us in one way or another, either print it out and send it to us or email it to us. This will bypass that step. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be an immediate renewal, because we still have to double check things on the staff side once you submit documentation. So there will be a process. You'll have to set up an account, and there will be a step we'll walk through, very easy, probably set of instructions that will prompt you to give information so that we can link your login to your license, and then you can receive notifications. But all of this is still being developed. We actually have a demo later, I believe either this week or next, with the software company that's working on this for us. But it should streamline, at least on your end as licensees, the renewal process, and you won't have to print out and send things and buy stamps, and it's one more thing to increase efficiencies and reduce cost on our end with staff time. It's going to be a good change. It might be something to get used to on the user side. But once it's out and working, if you have questions, feel free to contact board staff. We will know how it works and how to guide you through it by the time it's active. The other thing I wanted to update you all on, and this relates back to the budget conversation, was what you approved at the last meeting was for staff to go ahead and move forward applying for what we call the State Appraiser Regulatory Assistance. Well, that's not the exact acronym, but it's the State Appraiser Regulatory Assistance grant, basically, that the appraisal subcommittee makes available through the foundation, the appraisal foundation, for states that need help either building out a website, improving enforcement processes, developing a practicum course like Mississippi did. Those are all uses that the state can identify to qualify to receive this grant money. What you all approved was for us to file for that grant so that we could potentially use those funds to assist in reducing our compliance caseload. And that's essentially what was done. We applied for the grant. We've had a little bit of back and forth in terms of questions and clarifications from their subject matter experts, which have gone pretty well smoothly. And at this point now, we're in policy making for if we're going to receive this money, we kind of have to have a system in place to govern where it goes and how we spend it and all of those things in order to comply with federal grant guidelines. One of the things that this board is a semi-independent board, right? So we're exempt from a good section of statutory requirements related to accounting, Secretary of State auditing. We have financial reviews, but because we're not part of the general fund, there are fewer mandatory controls in place. It doesn't mean that we don't need some controls. It just means that we now get to develop those in a way that best serves the board and in terms of transparency and what the federal government's going to require for receiving these funds. So I'm actually currently in the process of researching that. I should have something to bring before you folks, policy-wise, hopefully October or sooner. I don't want to commit to an exact date because we don't have anything on paper yet, but that is in development. I'm working with policy and working on policy and working with other subject matter experts to develop that policy, probably based somewhat on the Oregon Accounting Manual, the handbook. So not probably verbatim because there are things in there that apply to other general fund agencies that we're exempt from and thresholds that we're not going to be meeting because of the size of the agency. We're not talking about $1 million grant here, so there are certain thresholds to trigger things that we're not going to have to deal with. So I want to make sure that the policy that's in place reflects what's actually happening. So that's not written down yet, but should be in October. Hopefully have something for you folks to review.
Do they have any deadlines for this stuff?
No, they ask for information in terms of clarification, and you kind of have a sense of what they're asking for when they ask for it. So you know the right answer before you give it. So we do need to have policies in place, but it seemed like the appraisal subcommittee was okay if we're in policy development for even the first year of it. I don't anticipate that being a need. I would like to have policy in place for you folks, or at least present you with policy to approve before that point. Because again, I'd like to get the money and start using it to benefit the board and the public as soon as possible, but we can't do that without policy in place. So it would be a situation of receiving money and having it sit there. We don't want that. So, yeah.
And just for clarification, because that happened before I was on the board, that's to help with the investigation.
Correct. Yeah.
Correct. So
Yeah.
that would help with that backlog.
And some of it will probably be allocated toward doing pre-licensure audits because that's another investigator activity that up to this point, a lot of board members have been assisting with, but traditionally it's been the board staff that does those audits just for consistency. But so in order to get back to that and maintain those audits for new licensees and still be able to continue to produce cases, that's probably another one of the ways that we'll use that money is to assist investigators in that pre-licensure audit process so they're not diverted from doing investigations, which really require quite a bit more focus and time, right? So it's using the funds in one of those two ways to assist compliance staff in reducing those case closure times in the backlog and get us caught up, hopefully dramatically within the first 12 to 18 months of getting that money, which is the hope. Yeah.
I bet you never thought you were going to be
writing grant
I
applications.
really didn't. Not when I got credentialed as an appraiser
Yeah.
roughly 1,000 years ago. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
that is it for my administrator's update.
so now we're on to the general discussion. We've got a lot today. Is there any general discussion, board members online over there? Or?
I have a question.
Okay.
Are we still seeing a big influx of complaints coming from the GSEs, or is that kind of leveled off?
That's hard to say. It's hard to predict because they tend to come in chunks.
Okay.
And what I think is happening is that they've got limited resources just like we do. So
Thank God.
there's not an army of appraisers over there reviewing and double checking things for Fannie and Freddie. There's probably a handful of people, and they're working state to state to state in terms of probably looking at chunks of time in geographic regions. So today we're working on California, and we're working on the 2019 to 2022 cases, loans that were closed. And then they identify a few that they need to send.
So is that
And then
speculation?
That is speculation
Okay.
on my part, but just based on how I see these things come
Uh-huh.
through, we're getting them in batches of 3 to 5.
Okay, like,
And it's usually about once a month or once every other month or so that we're getting those. And
but
it
we're
does
not seeing
seem-
20 a month.
No, and they have, Stephanie actually is the one that intakes a lot of that stuff. They have started to kind of trickle off.
I have not seen a lot come in,
Yeah.
but like Chad said, if we do, we'll get about 3 or 4 at a time, and then it dies down for about a month, maybe 2, and then we'll just see some more come in, and then we won't hear from them.
But it does seem to be.
Yes.
It ebbs and flows, yeah.
Okay, excellent. That's good to know.
That's just relative to the GSE
The GSEs,
allegations, because the public ones, they come in.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Generally
different
just
story.
whenever they come in. So that's, here and there. But again, those volumes are not what we were seeing in 2021 either.
Not as many appraisals being done.
Also, not as much confusion about COVID variances and requirements not to go into homes. That caused a huge number of misunderstandings in terms of the users of appraisal services. There were a lot of cases open that surround that stuff that essentially probably, like I said, we're going to need to look at the work file and verify a few things because we couldn't verify that at the time on the spot. We had to open it, but now that we have stuff, there's very likely a number of cases that we'll be able to address and say, they met their obligations, this is minimally compliant, and move on. So, but that's another one of those pieces that ASC money will help with, all of those things.
When I came onto the board, I guess now we'll talk about this about 5 years ago, there was some travel, like the board would attend different parts of the state for different places. I don't know if we're ever going to get back to that, but if we do, maybe Lake County
I think
or
would
Klamath County.
some of the
Haven't been.
more underserved areas that maybe we don't have quite as many appraisers.
There is not a single appraiser in the entirety of Lake County, as I understand.
Oh, wow.
Klamath County. I was just,
Somebody in
There's some in Klamath.
somebody in Prineville's got a prime market thing to.
but basically, I don't know if it ever something, but
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be a board decision. The only thing I'd caution, and in fact, I believe it might be built into the budget for this biennium, given costs and things like that, that's something to consider before scheduling time away or sending me to Arrow. That's a couple $1,000 proposition.
I'll be at Arrow, so I can get.
well, I mean, this is, we're general discussion. I think that you should be at almost everything that is of importance.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
For the national conversations and to see the sea changes.
You have to know.
Yeah.
That's me, but that's, I'm only one
As I
person.
understand it, Arrow is going to go virtual every other. So in
Oh, really?
the fall, I can't remember which it is, but
Probably
either
the
all the,
spring.
the spring conferences will be virtual, the fall conferences will be
Okay.
live.
That's great. That's a great change.
As I understand
That's
it,
a
I
great
think it's
change.
excellent.
Yeah.
That'll give everybody an opportunity to
Right,
participate.
right.
No other discussion from our board members online there. I think that we're probably then motion for adjournment.
If
I
that-
did want to just say thank you. I'm excited to serve with all of
Yes.
you, and I appreciate being able to have open conversation and discussion. We may be on different sides of the table with regards to it, but I think it's important for us to have those open and decent conversations about.
We're
things.
physically and on
We are
other sides of
physically
the table, aren't we?
yes,
But no, yeah.
But I appreciate being able to have the open discussion. So,
I think it's great. I love that communication.
And Jeff, since Owen joined us a little bit late, did you want to give him a chance to introduce himself?
I
and just-
apologize. I thought I did. Owen, did I?
I'm so sorry about that. And part of the reason for the lateness is I am a father of two, and it's summertime, and drop-offs happen variably as camps change. But hi, everybody. Owen Bartles. I'm an appraiser, certified general real estate appraiser in Portland. I've been doing this work for 23 years now. And I'm really excited to be able to participate in these conversations with you guys. Did you want more than that, Chad?
That's your bio. It's up to you.
We'll tell stories about you later on.
Fair enough.
Okay, with that, I think do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll take the motion.
I'll second.
There's a second.
All right, Jeff,
Yes?
Lori,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Annie,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
and Owen.
Yes.
The time is 10:53. This meeting.
Well done.
Thanks, everybody.
Hold on.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
I don't think